Don't worry, Nero. The last thing Bikini Bottom needs is another crusted crab. We opened on Milky Holmes hiking a long path to the beach, mostly because they couldn't afford a bus, but really, who wants to ride on those diseased tanks these days? But yeah, they were supposedly heading to a cave that might have held clues to restoring their toys amongst its treasures. Treasures that the Phantom Thief Empire also happened to be looking for. Supposedly, they had been hidden by a multi-millionaire named Baskerville. Now, I don't think they're referring to the family from the famous Sherlock Holmes story, but rather John Baskerville, a real English businessman who helped popularize decorative techniques like paper mache and Japanning. The latter was a technique in coating items in a finish of lacquer and was based off a technique that originated from all over Asia. However, they called it Japanning because, well, things were a little less PC back then, as opposed to be overly PC nowadays, but I digress. Anyway, in this universe, I guess John became obsessed with collecting rare items with his fortune, and hid them as though he were frickin' Howard Hughes or something. He had also done a lot of research into toys in his final years, having lost his own after serving as a detective for many years. Sound familiar? Of course, Milky Holmes figured they might have stumbled upon something that could have restored theirs. And this was supposed to be their primary objective for coming to the beach, but these girls, who have the attention spans of gnats, of course turned this into a fan service beach episode. Not complaining, mind you, especially when Henriette joined in to see what they were doing. Surprisingly, the one who had made all of this possible was none other than 20. What was that? Like, I think it becomes a bit of a running gag throughout the episode, but it's just such a random way of cutting 20 off and transitioning to the next scene. Actually, you know what? I think I know what that is. It's the cops keeping track of this perv so that they can eventually bust him. Sir, we managed to track down that exhibitionist with the erect nipples. Please advise. Roger. Okay, guys, lethal force has been approved. But yeah, speaking of cops, the G4 were also there on their day off to just add to the fan service, as if we weren't already eating well enough. Don't take that low-hanging fruit. Resist, man, resist. Anyway, Henriette kept an eye on the cops and detectives, allowing her thieves to work. I don't know, M. Night Shyamalan. All the while, Milky Holmes as usual were trying to find their next meal, and were coming up empty-handed and headed. Just blame it on Little Slugger, and I'm sure there won't be any negative consequences. To make matters worse, a storm forced them to find shelter in a cavern. Realizing how deep it went, they figured that maybe Baskerville's treasure might have been hidden in it. And sure enough, they found literal signs that pointed to such, along with security that wouldn't have really existed in Baskerville's time, but best not to point out all of the show's inconsistencies, otherwise these reviews would be filled with that one Rick clip. Anyway, the teams ended up being split in half, with Kokoro's group being stuck with the nyctophobic Cordelia. FYI, she becomes the best part of this episode, but for now, Cheryl's group seemed to find Baskerville's treasure room that apparently had a Zoni lock on it.
It's a Sony.
Anyway, Nero tried to use her toys on it, but of course it didn't work, so fortunately, Saku was able to figure out the password that makes me unsure whether or not this character was supposed to be a Sherlock Holmes reference or not. Pretty sure they didn't want to keep that pooch around for long. Also, yeah, this was the episode where they made the most blatant Megurine Luca reference because really, why not? Back with Kokoro's group, on top of having to deal with Cordelia's Kindaichi references, they were having no luck escaping from the cave. Left with no other options, Kokoro decided to make an escape rope out of their swimsuits. Of course, most of them were against it, while Cordelia, in her psychosis, was all too happy to get this video demonetized. Back with Cheryl's group, they entered into yet another booby-trap room. As a result, they ended up getting separated from Henriette. However, she did manage to find Baskerville's greatest treasure ever. You say this episode was written by the guy who did the series comp for Food Wars, huh? She would later be joined by Saku when she stumbled upon a retro game trap. Yeah, maybe next time you should just stick with the Project Diva games there, girl. Back with Kokoro's group, they managed to escape the cavern, but had ruined their swimsuits in the process. And so that I don't need to do a lot of censorship, I will mention now that my biggest problem with this episode is that it does jump around a little too much and doesn't hold on a scene for long. Like, I'm not saying an episode like this needs to have a lot of plot, but it would also be nice if we could actually see some stuff play out, like Kokoro's group actually escaping from the cavern. Anyway, they couldn't relax for long, as they were then attacked by Blooper? Guess he's pissed he didn't appear that much in the Mario movie. Fortunately, a slightly less insane Cordelia had overcome her fears, allowing her hunger to take over, and she went full 80s anime OVA on the poor cephalopod. Seriously, anyone else remember the days of the bubble economy when anime could turn out some full-on hyper-violent, over-sexualized schlock with high production values? Good times, Raw. Good times. Anyway, I guess we got one kind of, sort of character arc for this episode when Nero and Cheryl found what appeared to be the secret to restoring their toys. Yeah, they kind of had this thing going with Cheryl encouraging her friend to use her technopathic toys, but it didn't get a lot of focus, so we didn't really bring it up in an earlier scene. It is going to play a role in this episode in just a bit, but kind of thankfully, it was mostly played up as a joke because really it didn't get that much build up. Anyway, they did indeed find some toys, or rather some limited edition figurines, because those are totally different things and stop coming to my shelves. And of course, it turned out to be another trap that started to fill all of the rooms with cold water. To stop it, they of course needed to use Nero's toys, and through the power of friendship, it worked, I guess. Yeah, I kind of wish this plot point had just remained a bit of a joke, as this does feel a little too cheesy, even for this show. But whatever, these two are also friendship ponies, so just go with it, I guess. And hilariously enough, even though they avoided drowning, the water system still ended up flushing them out of the room, though noticeably, the number on the machine went from 5 to 40. This would turn out to represent the water's temperature in Celsius. Yeah, for my American viewers, 40 C is 104 Fahrenheit, perfect hot spring temperature, because of course we have to end this episode of pure cheesecake on a hot spring shot. This was probably one of the best examples of Misato Katsuragi's old catchphrase. It's unashamed and blatant fan service, and in many ways, I do have to kind of respect that. It knows what it is and doesn't try to rise above it, leading to some honest entertainment to say the least. That said, while I'm not expecting much plot from an episode like this, I do kind of wish they had held on a few scenes a little longer, just to get more laughs. Maybe it's because we're coming right off the high bar that was the endless barrage of gags, and yeah, surprisingly solid story of the last episode, but this did feel a little lacking. Obviously, not for the blatant fan service that this had in spades, but the comedy was a little hit and miss. As we said, there was a lot of cuts leading to scenes where the punchlines just couldn't completely land. Granted, some of them probably wouldn't have landed in any case, like Twice's weird police radio gag. In my opinion, most of the comedy came from Cordelia, who was consistently the best part of this episode. Otherwise, everything else was just kind of a weak chuckle. Again, for something that's clearly meant to be cheesecake, story and plot aren't necessary, but comedy, which I guess you could say acts as the crust of the dessert, needs to be a little more solid to give it a good foundation. Thus, overall, I'll say this beach episode did exactly what it needed to do, but as a part of this comedy anime, it could have used a little more work. There was a lot of fool's gold here, both in Baskervilles' treasure and in the writing of this one. So thankfully, what's coming up for this channel will be a bit of a better example of some hilarious fan service. And yeah, while I can't show you the cover just yet, I think you can recognize those shoes and that hair. Yep, we're going to be doing a Princess Precure Doujinshi review with some really good art and our characters slightly losing it. So do look forward to it. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and oh great, did someone forget to pay the electric bill again? Okay everyone, standard protocol, get the straitjacket ready.